let's just begin by breathing together and simply noticing that you are breathing. That's always a good place to start. And see if you can just kind of check maybe the quality of the breath. And now let's take 3 of the fullest breaths that you've taken yet today. And because you're muted, if you want to, you can make a sighing sound on that exhalation. It's really a great way to just allow tension to ride out with the breath. Releasing anything that you've been holding onto that you don't need in this moment, just in this moment. And in the Sufi practice, we often, or maybe at least in the flavor of Sufism that I'm kind of involved with, we start with an invocation, we call it. So I'm going to say it, and as you're breathing, see how you might be able to breathe toward the one. So the one source, whatever that means to you, it doesn't have to mean anything specific, but if there's some way that you can kind of point yourself to what I call the all-embracing, ever-unfolding source of love as we do this invocation. Toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the mystery, the spirit of guidance. Bismillah, ar-Rahman, ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of the One, who is most merciful and compassionate. Amen. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is let's start with, it's called a wazifa practice, and it's Ya Halim. And Halim is the gentle, healing love. So I'd like to just really wrap us in this kind of cocoon of gentle, healing love. And the first part of the word Halim, the hal, can mean an accommodation for something, like a tent or a spiritual state. So as we chant this mantra, Halim, we'll be creating an accommodation for what unfolds next, whatever happens next. And it's a state that can help us tune in with the purpose of our lives in this moment, free from like a rigid holding of who we think we should be. So it's very soft and gentle. And so I would invite you to center in the heart and allow the breath to, I'm just going to take a moment here and welcome Ellen in. Welcome, Ellen. Glad you're here. So we're centering in the heart and allowing the breath to go wherever you feel any tightness or holding or rigidity. Just allow the breath to go to this place. Maybe it's the shoulders. For me today, it's really been in my heart. My heart's been very tender today. Softening as you breathe in. Softening this area that might feel tight and held. And allowing the tension to ride out on the breath. Just softening, softening, softening. And we'll say the phrase Ya Halim 11 sometimes, kind of in support of this, creating this gentle holding accommodation for what's going to unfold next for us. Ya Halim, 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 Ya Halim. Feeling the soft, spacious accommodation of this love that you're being held in, but it's not too tight. It's just a gentle embrace. And now I thought what we could do is let's do a check-in. And if you would say your name, or I like to playfully say whatever you'd like to be known by for the next 45 minutes that we're together. It can be some other name that you don't usually use. And where you're joining us from, and your current, just what you're noticing that's arising in you right now. So I'll start. And pronouns. Say your pronouns too. She, her, they, them, he, his. I think that's right. So I'll start. Latifa, she, her. And I am joining you from Batesville, Virginia. And I'm out in the country and loving it. And my current state is, as I mentioned a few moments ago, tender and allowing tender. Let's see. Suzanne, will you go next? Would you be willing to go next? Hi. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much
Okay.
better.
My
Yeah.
microphone must have been hidden.
Yeah.
Suzanne joined, she, her. I'm joining from Chicago, and I signed up 1 minute before the thing started. I put it in my calendar, but I hadn't realized that there was a whole registration, and so I felt, oh my God, no, I might not be able to. Anyway, I'm so excited to finally meet you. I've been a student of Cavalier's for many years, and whenever I saw you join, I've always had to miss the summer retreats. I've never worked. I've always heard about the Sophistic Way. Have read a couple books, but never, practiced. Anyways, so I feel a lot of excitement about finally meeting you in this way, even though I missed you in person. So thank you
Oh, thank you.
for offering this session.
I have goosebumps. Thank you. So stay tuned this summer. We were to have an in-person, but it's now going to be, I think, a virtual retreat. And we're getting ready to have that conversation. So stay tuned, Suzanne, for that.
Exciting. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And Lisa, maybe you feel like just being quiet tonight, but if you'd like to share, I'd like to give you the space to do that. And if you're on a computer, which it looks like you are, you can just press the space bar down while you're speaking if you want to be heard.
So Lisa wrote in the chat box that
thank you.
First time on Zoom, not allowing me to unmute, just want to observe.
Okay, great. Well, I'm really glad you're here, Lisa. And Lisa, again, if you have anything you want to share or ask questions about, especially toward the end, or anything, if you want to write in the chat box, you can do that. And Ellen, hi, I'm so happy you're here. And Ellen, do you know how to use, would you like to use your video camera is one question I have. And secondly, okay, Ellen's saying she can chat. Great. So if you want to share I'm guessing you want to, well, whatever name you'd like to be known by, and where you're joining us from, your pronouns, where you're joining us from, and just what you're noticing that might be arising right now. So if anybody can't see the chat, Ellen's saying it's wonderful to see your belovedness again, which I thank you. That is very touching. Uh, I'm Ellen, she, her. I'm in Foxborough, Massachusetts, and if there's anything you're noticing that might be arising. Yes. I'm feeling gratitude, she says. Oh, beautiful, lovely. And learning patience. Ya sabur. That means patience. And sadness because I miss my kids. Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. Yeah. And before, Alyssa, I ask you, Lisa, I just really want to acknowledge your courage for using Zoom and getting on here. And look, you did it, and you got the password in the right place. And so I just really want to acknowledge the technological challenges you may have had to overcome to get here. I'm really happy you're here. And Ellen, I'm really happy you're here too. And Alyssa, how about you?
Alyssa, she, her. I'm in Portland, Oregon. So I think am I the only one on this time zone? Pacific Standard Time. Um, I'm feeling curiosity to your teaching, Latifa, to what's going to happen today.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. So, so let's go back to this gentle, healing love where we started. And really, none of these things are outside of us. These are just qualities that we can, with a little maybe curiosity and perseverance, we can evoke from the internal landscape. It's not something we're reaching outside of ourselves for. So I'm going to read you a little poem. From the primordial chaotic within, Hokhmah, the breath of nourishing insight, has created a separate place to live. By enclosing her unknowable inner mystery, holy wisdom has created an address for her temple. She has done this by dividing the dark, pushing from outside until the foundations of her dwelling, the necessary basic selves, joined together by their own mutual attraction. This natural union creates the first conscious I am. So this evening we're going to be practicing the presence of the Divine Feminine. The Sophia tradition is another way to say Hokhmah. It's the wisdom tradition represented by Hokhmah. And it's so timely for me, actually, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But in essence, it's a gathering. It's a gathering and a welcoming of both inside and outside, the loved and the unloved parts of ourselves and parts of what we see outside of ourselves. Gathering the scorned and the honored. I know we all have those places where we're kind of proud to let people see how talented or charming or funny or what a good mom we are. And then there's the darker, maybe places that we don't like to share publicly so much, like shame or guilt or not good enough. So we want to make sure we're setting a place at the table for all of these aspects of ourselves. And the degree to which we can welcome these parts of ourselves I have found is the degree to which I can welcome those same parts in other people. You know, like when I'm feeling some kind of uh, um, like resistance or aversion to somebody, often I can turn the mirror to myself and say, okay, where in here have I not welcomed this part that's being reflected externally? So, so as we continue, I really believe a lot of our spiritual work is about creating and increasing our inner capacity to hold whatever is so. And sometimes that means to hold seeming opposites. So we can practice sacred discrimination and watch with a loving presence. And I love this idea of these abilities that we can use, seeing and listening and holding someone, either internally or externally, with heart. These are all tools of holy wisdom, of Hokhmah, who we're working with. And as the write-up said, the roots of the word, the HO, point to the breath of individuality. It's coming just you and you and you and you and you and each of us. The breath of individuality, which arises from a sense of inner-ness that then expands out to connect with sacred unity. So it's the individual, and then we recognize in our inner-ness all of this diversity in here, and all of this diversity can unite, can commune with sacred unity. For me, there's lots of different words I use for the divine, sacred unity. Some people use God. I'm aware that that holds a lot of baggage for people, or can. Yeah. So, so a lot of the work that I do springs out of native Middle Eastern spirituality. So thousands of years ago, which is what this is. And in the native Middle Eastern traditions, the journey into the depths of self begins with the discovery of who is doing the traveling. Who is doing the traveling? So first, we might differentiate various parts of the self, like the mother, or the responsible one, or the efficient one, or the happy one. And then hear their voices as we differentiate and call them together. Invite them together. I remember when I was a little girl growing up, my mom had a cowbell, and she'd ring the cowbell at 6 o'clock and would all come running home for dinner. Maybe something a little more mellifluous than a cowbell to bring your parts together, but something to draw them together. And sometimes the voices are disturbing. Ellen said her mom used a cowbell too. I think we're of a similar generation, Ellen. So some of the voices might be disturbing or surprising, and that's okay. We journey on as we call these parts of ourselves together, and there's no right way to proceed, but we can draw on Hokhmah, or what we're calling holy wisdom, or another way to say it is sacred sense, and which helps to guide the process and the individual self's process and integrate it into our lives. Let's see what else I want to say about. So Hokhmah could also be translated as sacred self, and the deeper aspect is understanding how all of our senses, our touch, our sight, our taste, our hearing, are gathered, and they return back to the source. This has been such an important practice for me to keep remembering and reuniting with the source. It's almost like a Mobius loop for me. It's like creation is creating itself in every moment, in every breath. So we get the creation, and then it folds back to source, and then we get another manifestation of creation, and it folds back to source. So in the old Semitic sense, which is the Semitic languages were the native Middle Eastern languages. There was Hebrew, Aramaic, which would have been the language that Jesus spoke, Arabic, and I think there's others, but I don't know what they are. But anyway, there's this common rooted sounds of the Semitic languages, and the nomadic people called on Hokhmah, the sacred sense. She's the one gathering all of these senses, living through us, living the senses through us. And you could say that she's the closest, most intimate part of the divine that is sensing right through you. Like the divine is sensing itself through your senses, which can be kind of mind-blowing. So sensing reality, living through us, loving through us in all the many ways that she does. So I thought what we would do is we'll do what I call a body prayer. But before we move into the body prayer, I'm going to sing a little Hokhmah. And this work comes through Sadi Neil Douglas Klotz. He's been a great teacher of mine. And so I'll sing this song. If you catch it at any point, feel free to sing. If you just want to feel the vibration and relax into the sound, you could do that. And Alyssa, you can let me know if this sound is okay. So the words are Hokhmah, Alatu. Alatu is sacred unity. So it's just this mantric song that's going kind of looping, like that Mobius loop that I was talking about, from Hokhmah back to sacred source, through the senses, back to sacred source. Hokhmah, Alatu, Hokhmah, Alatu, Alatu, 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 Hokhmah, Alatu, Hokhmah, Alatu, Alatu. And keeping this sense as we move into the body prayer. Alatu is this ancient Middle Eastern name. It predates Aramaic, predates Arabic, and it points to the same thing of sacred unity. So, Hokhmah is the breath of nourishing insight, allowing Hokhmah to embrace me, embrace you, embracing all of you and all of these different selves. All of these aspects of you are welcome. These conflicting feelings that you might find within you, don't isolate them off. Keep gathering them together. Keep gathering together. You'll find this healthy place of integration. So let's feel the breath coming in and going out. And one of the Middle Eastern ways to practice this is to place one hand lightly over the heart so that you can feel the chest rise and fall, so that you can feel the breath sweeping over the heart. The heart is the center of our courage, our audacity, but also the center of pulsing. And the heart pulses blood, and it comes in bringing new life. So every time we breathe in, the heart works in this beautiful, mysterious concert with the lungs, sending the oxygen to every cell in the body, giving every cell the nourishment that it needs. And with every exhalation, what is not needed in this moment is carried out in the breath, just carried away. This process of new life and letting go is happening with every breath you take and every heartbeat. And now see if you can breathe with the name Hokhmah. And let it be easy, nothing to strive for. Hokhmah. Just breathing that sound on the inhalation and on the exhalation. Breathing naturally. Allowing your breath to settle more deeply. Feeling Hokhmah's presence as we feel all of the senses gathering within us, all of the aspects of who make up you. Smelling, touching, tasting, feeling, body awareness, all of these senses, bring them all here. They're all welcome. We're all welcome. And all the voices within us, sometimes contradictory, sometimes helpful. And now imagine a table. And I really want you to take a few moments to create the table that would be large enough and welcoming to all the aspects of yourself. Perhaps it's like a big wooden table. Maybe it's really thick. Maybe it's glass, or maybe it's metal or some other material. But imagine whatever would be most welcoming to all these aspects of you, especially the parts that might be a little reticent to be seen or be known. Really seeing the detail, the color of the table and the texture. Is it smooth? Maybe it has a little more texture to it. The thickness, the height of the table. Maybe it's low to the ground and everybody's sitting around. So with the breath and with the sound of Hokhmah on the breath, we invite the aspects of our inner being to come together in harmony. Breathing Hok in and breathing Hok out. This is your own natural breath, your own unique rhythm. No one has a rhythm exactly like you. Hokhmah is helping us to gather ourselves, gather our courage, gather our sense of healing, of energy, gather whatever might be arising for you in this really tricky time that we're navigating together. Today I came in touch with a deep grief, and it's the grief of people dying alone. And I realized it touched a part of me because I wasn't there when my father died. At the moment he died, I wasn't there. And so there's this deep grief that I am allowing and welcoming. So just noticing what might be rising in you that might be calling out during this time of COVID. And you are enough to hold all of these. You were born for this. You were born to experience this very moment as it unfolds, however it unfolds. This life, our gifts, limitations, all of this. This is what it is to be fully human. We are the experiment. It's all a great experiment, but we're not alone. So if we reach out just a bit with our breath, we don't need to feel isolated. We can feel all of creation, all living beings are experiencing. All living beings are touching and tasting and smelling and feeling and seeing all in their own way. And we're part of a universe, of a much larger community, of sacred sense, of holy wisdom. You are holy wisdom. It's not something that's outside of you. Holy wisdom surrounds us, and you are made up of holy wisdom. Let's allow Hokhmah to breathe through us and with us for a few more breaths. You can always return to this place or a place very similar, this welcoming table, maybe there's a delicious meal on the table that is drawing you, all the aspects, but it's here anytime you need it. By simply breathing and turning within and feeling the heart. And if you find it useful, you can invoke the name Hokhmah. to bring you back to presence. So let's make a promise to our inner selves to remember this whenever you might need it. Take this moment, use this breath to be fully alive with all of the aspects of your holy wisdom. And now let's release the practice, as the Buddhists might say, with the benefit for all beings. And the Middle Eastern people might say, Amen, Ament, Amin. And all of those words that sound like Amen, really the translation is, may this be the ground from which all of our future action grows. Amen. So, if anybody has anything you'd like to share, what you've noticed, when I was sharing with you about what I got in touch with today, I also got in touch with the part of me that was trying to keep the grief down, and that felt like if I let the grief be felt, I wouldn't be able to turn it off. And so I let the grief be felt, and it subsided. But so there's, those were like kind of two conflicting places in me, the part that wanted to grieve and the part that wanted me to hold it together so I could kind of function in the world. Yeah. So I'm going to take a breath and stop talking. I've been talking a lot. See if there's anything that wants to be said or chatted, if you want to chat anything.
I can share if
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. And then Ellen, I see you've chatted something, but let's hear from Suzanne and then I'll share that. Yeah.
So when I had a big wooden table with fruit, it looked a little bit like Jesus' Last Supper, but that's the image that came to mind, with fruit and water, and I noticed that first the right half of the table was filling, and my inner gaze I also felt looking to the right. And then I was feeling kind of like smaller parts, like instead of senses and stuff, I typically work with the inner aspects of like the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old, sort of the kind of, I have a lot of childhood trauma. And so I was like, unsurprisingly, my different trauma ages kept lining up. And then I noticed, whoa, they're all on the right side. And a lot of my childhood trauma is related to men. So let's see what comes on the left. And then I started feeling more into the left and inviting whatever association I had with women. And then something really interesting happened. It almost was like a foul smell of some like dark, rotten creatures. Anyway, so it wasn't a bad experience at all. It definitely also wasn't bliss, but I just left it at like the inviting these creatures. And I don't know, does that sound crazy to you?
It does not sound crazy at all. So know that, please. Do you have any, not that it really matters, but do you have any sense of what it might mean for you? I mean, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. I don't want to get stuck on that, but.
No, I mean, my rational mind, of course, was observing this, which seemed a little obscure. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I haven't had very many female strong figures in my life. And then it almost felt like ancestral, like my weak mom, my dead grandmas, that were all kind of very dark bitter figures that died early. And so I was like, it felt almost like that was playing in here. But I at that point, I was just like, this is, I'll stop here. I just let it be then. I listened
Yeah,
to your
beautiful.
words and
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. You know, there's this uh, reframing of time. I don't know why I'm sharing this, but when you were talking about your ancestors, I think this is where it's coming from, in the Sufi tradition, and it's one of the past is out ahead of you. I mean, often we say the future is ahead of us, but the
Mhm.
past is out ahead of us with all of our ancestors ahead of us. And we're walking in the footsteps. It gives me chills to say it. Walking in the footsteps of our ancestors who are turning around with their hands extended to draw us forward in their steps. And then we, in turn, are able to turn around and draw your young baby, forward in your steps. So I just had this image of your ancestors going ahead, drawing you forward into the future, into the past, into the future. It's all, yeah.
Asked one more thing.
Please.
That's for some reason it's I didn't intend for this to be a topic when I registered, but as I was listening to you, I just my own personal associations with the Arabic cultures are also, this ties in with my, it's like the very male dominatedness, and I'm assuming that a lot of Sufism is also male originated. How does that how is the female represented in this?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I think so I've been involved for 27 years. Yeah, Ellen just said, I love that question. It's a great question. And so there's a lot of women who wrestle with it. And Ellen, maybe you can add some things to this too. I'd really appreciate it. Um, One of the ways that I have worked with a little aspect of it is to change the languaging. So either degenderize the wording of things, or I put it into, sometimes I'll put it into feminine, or sometimes I'll flip it back and forth. Um, so the invocation that I said at the beginning, there's a word, who form the embodiment of the master, and I've changed it to mystery. And the reason I do that is not to be anything really other than I the reason I love the Sufi tradition is that there's not a dogma, and basically it's finding what's useful to me, to you, in removing the obstacles that keep me from love. And so if changing a word from master to mystery, that's an easy one. Boy, that's an easy one. And so there's that. I know that there's a lot of stories now, that are books that are being written about women Sufis. And then this one teacher who I mentioned, whose work that I have followed for 27 years, his name is Neil Douglas Klotz. His Sufi name is Sadi. He's done a lot of work with the native Middle Eastern spirituality, and a lot of work around the Jesus work. And I'm not a biblical scholar. I don't know that much about um, the Bible and Jesus, other than what I've kind of caught, in the air, and my teachings through Sadi, which is he is. I really recommend this great little book called Prayers of the Cosmos. It's a little book, and basically the way I've heard him say that Jesus was a feminist, Jesus was an ecologist. I mean, if we were to put isms to the way he lived his life. And so it's a very gentle, loving, um, kind of uplifting messaging, as opposed to like the shaming, you know, like to me, so a lot of the patriarchal feels kind of top down, and you've done something wrong and you're not good enough, and the feminine feels more like uplifting and supportive. So it's a journey. It's a journey. And Ellen, I'd love to hear if you have anything to say about it. I'm reading her chat. Ellen says, I also believe that we're supposed to be here and that we're meant to experience this. We've been preparing for this to help in any ways we can. And then Suzanne, she said she loved that question. And then, great. If Ellen, there's anything else you can add. But it's like, so I'm also initiated into the Mevlevi order, which is whirling dervishes. And for up until probably maybe 40 years ago, women weren't allowed to do it. And so that's, at least in this country, that's shifting. I think it is in the Middle East too, but I think women have to maybe be a little more careful about it, about the turn, the whirling dervish. Ellen writes, I can't really add except that all Sufi women I've known are wonderful, loving teachers. Well, good. Yay, Ellen, I'm so happy. Yeah. Does that help, Suzanne?
Yeah, I think I hear you say that you have the ability to to just follow your heart. I mean, it is a tradition that centers on the heart and to turn the practices into, because I totally agree. For me, the women also feel this patriarchy feels top down heavy and feels this, and that you've somehow found that in this tradition for you by stripping words away or okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I honestly, flippantly say, I don't really care who said what, as long as it's useful, then I think it's important to practice with it. And I think there was something else I wanted to add. Oh, what I do want to say is I've also been very careful not to kind of play on the playing field of the patriarchal framework. Like I don't really want to even be on that place. So I don't really engage in it. I don't, do you know what I mean? It's like, um, how can I say? Uh, I just, I don't even engage in the conversations about so much about the male patriarchy and how women should fight against. I think fighting against it is it's playing the same game. Or I don't mean game.
I know that this is how many people would want to discuss this. This is not what I was referring to. I'm actually seeing a parallel in I do a lot of Zen
Mm,
work
mm.
that has a very similar structure. And I personally find it hard sometimes to find the female way in, like, when all the talks you're hearing, all the books you're reading have a little bit that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just curious in how you found that bottom up blossoming in a
Uh-huh.
tradition.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Because I want
Yeah,
to, essentially, I'm here at my Zen retreat being like, no, I don't want to sit for 30 minutes all still, even though that's what you say, exactly what I should be doing.
yeah,
My Zen
yeah,
wisdom has to be soft. What does
yeah,
it look like? I don't know. There aren't very many role
yeah.
models. And I assume that you are in a very similar position where you have to sort of feel for the truth
Feel for the
and
truth.
run with it.
Yeah, and also remember that we all have male and female aspects. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like pointing out and saying men are bad. I don't mean that at all. But maybe what I do mean is I do feel like our culture maybe is skewed toward the masculine. And so I do think it's really important to continue to stay in balance by cultivating the feminine. I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
And for
Thank
listening
you.
out.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Alyssa, is there anything you wanted to say? Anything you wanted to share? Not that you have to, of course.
I just wanted to add you talked about the retreat that's coming up. So I wanted to add the link for um,
Oh, thank you.
people who want to read about it. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, but we're moving it to online, so it's a great chance for people all over to attend this retreat. And Latifa, you'll be there, and other Presence Collective teachers as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I know we're at time, but I just want to take one moment to do a little loving kindness for our inner selves. Is that okay, Alyssa? Maybe a minute or two? Okay, great. Thank you. So let's come back to these gathered selves that we've been working with this evening, and let's send, I love to put a hand on the heart and maybe a hand on the solar plexus, and take a breath centering in the heart. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be held in loving kindness. May I feel connected and calm. May I accept myself just as I am, all of the aspects of myself, welcoming them to the table, welcoming us to the table. May I be happy, and may I know the natural joy of being alive. Amen. Thank you all so much. So happy to be with you. Alyssa, is there anything else we need to say? Okay, same time next Monday. I won't be teaching next Monday. I'll be teaching again on the 18th. So you'll have another lovely human. Thank you, Ellen. Namaste, everyone. Bye-bye.